11 p.m. Central. That's right here on VCY America.
You're listening to VCY America Worldwide, KVCX Gregory, and WVIW Bridgeport.
Looking for a lift? Experience a seed from the sower with Michael Guido of Metter, Georgia.
Bored by a tedious talk in the House of Commons, Winston Churchill fell asleep. Angrily, the speaker walked over to him and asked...
This Crosstalk program is pre-recorded.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk here on VCY America. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a time in which there is a war against normal. For instance, millennia of normal told us that marriage is between a man and a woman. It's how God designed it. It's how biology works. However, people in black robes gave sway to a society and changed normal to that which is abnormal. And so we have so-called same-sex marriage. We have created thruples and now polyamorous domestic partnerships. And it's not going to stop there. Let's look at another issue. Since the creation of mankind, you are male or female. That is normal. That's how God created us. However, that is no longer accepted. It is no longer normal. Now we have science deniers who indicate you can change your gender. That is, if you are male, you can be female and vice versa. But that's not truth. That's deception. Just yesterday, for instance, a majority of U.S. senators voted 52-48 to confirm Dr. Rachel Levine as the first openly transgender as a federal official. This is a biological male who identifies as female who's going to be making significant health care decisions and directives to our nation. Folks, this is not normal. We could address so many issues here, and we're going to delve into more, but today there are many issues. That which is declared legal, even though it's illegal. That which is illegal is legal, but it should not surprise us. I mean, look what the prophet Isaiah wrote, as recorded in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. He says, Woe! Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. That's where we are in society today. Joining us here today in discussion, we welcome back Robert Knight. Bob is a former Los Angeles Times news editor, writer, and was a media fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. He's a regular weekly columnist for the Washington Times and townhall.com, onenewsnow.com, and others. Robert has had senior positions in a number of pro-family organizations. He's an author of several books, including The Coming Communist Wave, What Happens If the Left Captures All Three Branches of Government, and Liberty on the Brink, How the Left Plans to Steal Your Vote. Wow. Bob, welcome back here to Crosstalk.
Always good to be in Crosstalk with you, Jim. And by the way, I wish you'd stick with that title for Hoover Institution, Media Fella. I sound more down to earth that way.
There we go. Hey, Bob, this war on normal is happening on so many fronts. Give us an overview as to what you see going on.
Well, it's a tidal wave, and I think that's deliberate because people, might see one or two things here and there and say, well, okay, somebody's going off the deep end. But my gosh, it's hitting us at every place it can, from TV to social media to just everyday media, the educational establishment, what kids are being taught in schools. I mean, it's just getting thicker and thicker. And Christians in particular are understanding that our way of life, our most fundamental values are under assault, and that if it isn't stopped, if it isn't halted and turned back with a mighty effort on the part of American citizens, we'll soon see persecution because they don't want tolerance. It's obvious that they don't want tolerance by their actions. Mm-hmm. They want to enforce a new set of views on everybody. And I think your example of Dr. Rachel Levine, whose real name is Richard Levine, being okayed by the U.S. Senate as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services is a watermark.
Yeah.
It's let's call it a landmark event, because it's the first trans person of such stature to gain office, just sub-cabinet level. And if you saw the clip of Senator Rand Paul questioning Dr. Levine sharply about whether he would come out and condemn taking children and giving them body-altering chemicals and even mutilating their genitals, could she oppose that? Would she please at least say that she was opposed to that? She wouldn't do it. She refused. In other words, she's for these taking these poor, confused kids and altering them permanently. Even if they, a few years later they straighten out, they're okay, like 95% of kids are when they have gender confusion. But this is who is now right at the top of our health establishment. It's stunning.
Yeah, and I heard you say she, but it's rather he.
Yeah, it really is he. And I don't go for the fiction of calling them what they want. Sometimes I do he, she. You know what they want? A lot of them is they and them. Mm-hmm. And I see this all the time on my college alumni website. They had some graduate who was saying them are proud holders of some new title somewhere, and they won't even. They're not even going for the other sex. They're going for an indeterminate sex. And
again, that's viewed as being normal, Bob, when it's not.
Well, yeah, and that was the point of my column. I started out with Unilever, the huge product company that's all over the world. And they have Dove products and Ben and Jerry's and all kinds of foods and personal products. They've come out and said they're no longer going to call anything normal. And we're talking about hair, shampoo,
Oh, yeah. I've seen the
or normal hair. No, that's offensive.
Yeah,
it's offensive to say something's normal.
From normal to dry hair or normal to oily hair or whatever it may be, that word normal is now taboo.
Yeah, it's taboo. And the whole idea is that this is being driven by the people who want to sell us the idea that there is no normal, in fact, and the extension of that is there's no objective reality. Yeah. Everything's in our heads. Gender is just a frame of mind, has nothing to do with biology. Your idea of normal may just be because you have common sense, and you notice that some things are normal, some aren't. No, that's verboten now.
Right.
You have to go with everybody's individual reality, and they often like to say, "Well, your truth isn't my truth." And, of course, that's nonsense to any Bible-believing Christian who knows that the Lord is Lord of truth. Mm-hmm. And he is not only truth, but the way and the life. And that's where this is eventually aimed at, the idea that the Bible holds truth, that it's something beyond debate, the moral framework that the Lord gave to us for our own good. And they're attacking it in so many ways. I don't know how many we can get to today, Jim.
Yeah. Well, we're going to break down some of these areas. And, Bob, you pointed something out in your column that I think is really important. You point out in this column that one of the most effective things that Marxists do is to commandeer language and steer it toward revolutionary goals. Comment on that aspect, because that really enters into our discussion as well.
Yeah, the word normal in particular, I've seen activists who are advocating everything under the sun, LGBTQ+, first insisting that everything they do is normal. And now they've gone beyond it. Now they say there is no such thing as normal. So it's all in your mind. And they've done this with many other words. I mean, just take the word hate. Hate is a neutral term. It means strong feelings of antipathy towards someone or something, and yet hate is now the go-to word to describe biblical beliefs or conservative beliefs of many kinds. They just decide it's hate. If you disagree with a liberal, in fact, that's the old joke. How do you know if you're disagreeing with a liberal and winning the argument? Well, you're quickly accused of being a hater or a bigot, and that's only too true. But what disturbs me, though, is that I hear a lot of young people who come out of Christian backgrounds mouthing the tropes of the left and repeating their talking points. I know this one young man who came out of a solid Christian household, and he likes to comment on my columns online, and he's saying, "Hey, Bob, you got to get woke. You're entirely in denial about white supremacy and white nationalism," which I don't even write about. But it's really scary when you see otherwise intelligent young people sound like parrots, parroting the left-wing slogans.
Right. Well, there's other parroting going on. I mean, look what's happened. I mean, normal used to mean Dr. Seuss. It meant Dumbo. It meant Peter Pan, the Swiss Family Robinson, and now these are out the window.
Yeah, they're out the window. People are probably aware from your program that Dr. Seuss is persona non grata now, and they pulled 6 of his books because they decided they weren't up to speed as far as the current political correctness. They also, but other things are happening, like Amazon removing the excellent documentary about Clarence Thomas.
Yes.
It's called Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words. This is a big bestseller, if you want to purchase it, but they were streaming it for free on Amazon Prime. And they removed it during Black History Month of all time. And, of course, they removed it because the left doesn't consider Clarence Thomas a real human being or a real black American. In fact, he's their worst nightmare. He's a very articulate black American conservative, and that they just can't allow that.
Right. We're seeing it at the border right now, too. We did a program yesterday on the border crisis, but, this administration will not call it a border crisis. This is a border challenge. You also point out in your column irregular crossings that are going on.
Yeah, that's what the president's spokeswoman has said, that it's just a challenge. And she just kept, to this day, she resists calling it anything but a challenge. Mm-hmm. But the president apparently has turned the whole thing over to Kamala Harris, the vice president, and she's finally admitted it's a difficult situation. But what floors me is the Democrat leading spokespeople like Schumer of New York and Pelosi are blaming President Trump for it.
Yes.
They say it's all his fault. It began on his watch. Well, yeah, it began because people south of the border were given the message that if Joe Biden wins the election, he's got a free crossing.
Come on to
come
America.
One, come all.
Yep.
You get free health care. He's pledged that. I mean, it's just, there's a welcome mat out, and they've created this terrible situation. A lot of people have died at the border trying to get across now. They've got kids jammed in these rooms, that are designed for like 60 people, and there are like 400 in them.
Fish bowls.
And then they barred photographs from being released of this.
Well, and today the president was asked, he was pointed out by reporters, when are you going to lift the sanction on reporters to go into these areas? And he says, well, you have to wait for my plan to be implemented first, and then I will lift, the sanction on the media going in. So much for transparency.
Boy, isn't that... Yeah. Imagine if Trump had said that.
Yeah.
They would have been screaming dictatorship, Hitler, suppression of the press. But when it's the Biden-Harris administration, it's whatever they do is fine. No real challenge.
We're going to take a quick break here. Robert Knight is our guest today on Crosstalk, the War on Normal. And friends, we're going to enter into our discussion after the break, this whole issue of drag queen story hours. And we'll share with you a matter that's going on right here in our own Milwaukee County on this issue. But there's more to come. Stay with us. This is Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, president, author, and creation seminar speaker with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, was the ark big enough to carry all the animals that needed to be on board?
Most assuredly it was, Chris. The ark was even bigger than it needed to be. Carefully estimating how many different kinds of animals there were before the flood and the average size, we see that the ark was more than sufficient for the task. In fact, it probably could have carried many more animals. I suspect that it also could have carried many more humans, too. But they had all rejected God's offer to repent and get on board. They died in the flood, but there was room on board. Chris, we don't know all the details about the flood, but those that we do know fit very nicely into the back to Genesis truth of creation and the flood.
To learn more about creation, get our free DVD called That's a Fact. Visit our web store at icr.org/store and use the promo code FACT at the checkout when ordering your That's a Fact DVD.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Our topic today, the war on normal. With us is Robert Knight. And those of you who get his columns, you're thankful for them. Just before we go on, Bob, your columns are available to go out by email to our listeners, correct?
They are. In fact, I encourage it. And if people email me at robertknight4, that's numeral 4, at gmail.com, I'll just add them to the list. It comes out every Monday morning. It's published on Sunday night online in the Washington Times. And then later the column is adapted for One News Now and used to be Town Hall. I've been bumped from Town Hall.
Really?
They say they want original content only, which is kind of laughable if you look at all the syndicated columnists they have there.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure what happened, but I'm no longer on Town Hall. They said if I write exclusively for them, I don't use any of my Times material, they'll publish me again. But I'm not going to write for free. I just I'd like to think I'm a professional writer and deserves his wages and so forth. So maybe someday I'll write another piece for them. But right now, I'd look for me on the Washington Times and One News Now, and the Surge Daily, which is a really well done news blog by Steve Pauls, who, well, he's a longtime journalist, and I won't go into that further, but it's good stuff.
Friends, again, if you'd like to get Bob's writings, and he will send them to you complimentary by email, that is, send him an email and say, I heard you on Crosstalk, please sign me up for your columns. Send an email to Robert Knight, and Knight is with a K, Robert Knight, then the number 4, Robert Knight 4, that's numeric 4, at gmail.com. Robert Knight 4 at gmail.com. And just put in the subject line, send me your free newsletter, or send him a note. I heard you on Crosstalk, would like to get your writings. Just send him an email, and he'll get you signed up. Robert Knight 4 at gmail.com. So let's talk about this war on normal, and I can't help but bring up this issue, and that's the drag queen story hours. And just think about this. We've got men dressing up like women to indoctrinate and to groom children. That's their words, and I've heard them say to groom children, grooming the next generation, and somehow this is normal. I mean, right here in our county, Milwaukee County, we have a children's court judge, which is the former president and CEO of Cream City Foundation that runs the city's Drag Queen Story Hour program. He's been arrested now on 7 counts of child pornography, allegedly uploading images and videos of children being sexually abused, not only on his personal computer, but also from his judge's chambers. He is also so-called married to another man, 2 adopted children, and there are people all across this country that are hauling their kids to these drag queen story hours. And Bob, this is normal?
Well, it's fashionable for some who want to show just how tolerant they are, and they're sacrificing their children's sanity to the cause of showing just how tolerant they are. I think any parent who would allow a small child to participate in something like this is not only beyond delinquent.
Yeah.
I'd say they're abusive. I think this is a form of child abuse to drag a child into such a perverse situation and educate them that this is somehow a good way to live. I mean, you'd think there'd be more of a pushback against something like this. It's so awful. But instead we see Dr. Seuss censored.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's too much for kids.
Yeah.
But drag queen story hour, no problem. A man dresses up in heavy makeup, weird women's clothing, and reads pro-homosexual stories to small children, and we're all supposed to be okay with that. And if we're not, we're the haters.
Yeah.
This is why the column says it's a war on normal.
Bob, we also have curricula now that's drafted, and it's being peddled to schools across this country to teach homosexuality and transgenderism as being normal. I mean, just today, I downloaded what is viewed as being lesson plans for teachers and how to go about teaching this transgenderism and gender-related issues in their classroom.
Yeah, there's nothing compassionate about taking a confused child and pushing them toward an unhappy lifestyle that not only the Lord doesn't want for them, because he's made it very clear in his word what's healthy and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really not a mystery. But just think of the fact that something like 90% of kids who are gender confused eventually recover their healthy born gender identity and go on. Same with homosexuality. If they're left alone, a lot of them get over it. But if they're encouraged, if they have early sexual experiences, that can form an addiction in their minds. And they can start believing the fiction that somehow they were born this way, and they have no hope of change. That's the least compassionate thing I can think of, is denying children or even adults the chance to change toward a healthier lifestyle.
We've got also a number of states, Bob, as you know, that are just trying to pass legislation to save girls' sports. I mean, a huge surprise when we have Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota caving on this issue, and other states are stepping up to the plate. But who could possibly think that biological boys can compete against biological girls as being normal? I mean, they're literally running away with girls' championships, breaking girls' records, and taking scholarships or opportunities from them. It's outrageous.
Yeah, it is, and I have to read the Washington Post every day just because I'm in the Washington area, and it's a paper of record. And they have been pounding this in editorials about how unfair it is not to allow transgender girls, i.e., boys who think they're girls, in races, and how hateful it is to deny them that opportunity. And I'm thinking, what? You really don't care about girls anymore, do you? I mean, you're more worried about pandering to the farthest out sexual minority than you are making sure that sports are fair, the girls have a chance. They've destroyed the idea of Title IX, which was supposed to protect women's sports and encourage them on campuses of all kinds, from high school to college. But where are the feminists in all this? They ought to be going crazy.
Yeah, indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand, it's not just here. I mean, I received an email from a listener in Wales, United Kingdom, indicating that the Bank of England's new 50-pound note that's going to enter circulation June 23rd is going to feature a new photo. It's going to be Alan Turing, who lived from 1912 to 1954. In 1952, he was convicted of gross indecency for his relationship with another man, the paper reports, arrested for having an affair with a 19-year-old male, then was forced to take female hormones as an alternative to prison. He died at age 41. An inquest recorded his birth as suicide. He was pardoned in 2013, and now he will be featured, according to the BBC, in reporting that the 50-pound banknote is going to bear his picture, and the bank now, Bob, is flying the rainbow flag above their building in London as a result. And again, I said, this is not normal.
Well, it's one of the biggest allies of the whole LGBTQ plus movement is big business. That they have come aboard because a lot of them have people who were educated at Ivy League schools or Oxford, in the case of England, and Cambridge, where they're huge gay contingents, and they got brainwashed in college, and they're bringing their twisted values with them into the corporate world, and then using corporate power to force it on everybody else. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen this for years. One of the smartest things the gay rights movement ever did in America was to go after corporations. I remember the Human Rights Campaign came up with a corporate equity index and they were rating companies,
Yep.
and they were giving them, and I just remember that any company that didn't go along with them would get a low rating, and then they'd be pounded by activists. And meanwhile, our folks who are just kind of trying to stay out of the whole thing and just buy products from companies they trust aren't a counterforce like you think they might be. Just in a few cases they've been, like Chick-fil-A, where Chick-fil-A came under a boycott from homosexual activists, and there was, in response, there was a boycott that was hugely successful. And yet Chick-fil-A even kind of cushioned its response, and it stopped funding places like Family Research Council. It's still a wonderful company, don't get me wrong, and their products are first rate. But even Chick-fil-A came under enormous pressure. And Cracker Barrel, that they were always rated very low in these corporate equity indexes. But now they've expanded into Massachusetts and Maine and places like that where sexual orientation laws are in place. So while they don't promote the lifestyle, they've had to concede on a number of levels just so they could do business. And the real model for all of this is California, where companies were told if you don't provide partner benefits to homosexual couples, you can't do business with the state. So they use, that's billions of dollars we're talking about. So from government to big business to academia to Hollywood, the hard press is on to okay all this and go after anyone who thinks there is such a thing as normal.
Yeah, indeed, and let's talk public safety. I mean, that's another aspect to this safety and security of our nation. How many times have we been told in the last year, Bob, about city councils reimagining policing, reimagining public safety, taking us away from that which we knew was normal? Yesterday a story also ran on Western Journal indicating that President Biden is going to now follow up on this $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill with legislation that one report says has the goal of quickly re-engineering the country. Bob, we're soon not going to recognize the United States of America with this re-engineering that is planned.
Well, it is scary, and I would recommend that people resist on every level they can. If it's civil disobedience, if it's just informing our neighbors what's going on, it's keeping informed, urging pastors to speak out on this stuff. If there's a tidal wave of opposition, they're not going to be able to roll over America the way they're doing right now. I think people are still stunned. A lot of people feel the election wasn't on the up and up. I happen to be one of them. I just seen too much evidence to convince me that it was a resounding victory for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I just don't believe that. And I do believe that even if they did say they did win, there's still widespread voter fraud because of the way the system was set up with a massive mailing, balloting, and right on the surface, you don't have to look for it. They changed the law on elections in several states illegally, unconstitutionally.
And look what they're trying to do now with H.R. 1 that will denormalize elections.
Yeah, that's the biggest threat we face right now. I mean, we could talk about the Equality Act, which would essentially criminalize Christianity, but H.R. 1 is the real threat, because if they get that, I don't see how we can have fair elections ever again in this country. There's a long list of things it does that are awful, but just start with it gets rid of voter ID laws in the states.
Right.
So you don't have to prove who you are like you would when you have to show ID for anything else. Automatic voter registration, same-day registration, endless mail-in balloting, registration without ID. I mean, it goes on and on. It's like a voter fraud enabling kit.
Yeah. And again, folks, that would denormalize our elections. We're opening phone lines. Let's get your comments, folks. Maybe you have a question for our guest today, Robert Knight. Our number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. Your reaction to this war on normal. We'll be back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
From Rich Cristiano comes the captivating film Unidentified.
Keith's gone.
What do you mean, gone? I just saw him go in there.
Just what I said, he's gone.
I can't find Darren.
Keith's gone, too.
Okay, that's impossible. We just saw them.
Someone find Keith and Darren.
I think it's that rapture thing.
What?
That Christian rapture thing, I'm telling you.
What rapture thing?
The rapture, the thing in the Bible.
Okay, that's crazy.
I'm telling you, I get a feeling it happened. All right, let's call some churches and see what they're saying. Vince, where's your phone book?
Has anyone talked to City Hall yet?
Vince.
Will someone please call news services?
Vince, I need your phone book.
I don't have one.
Lauren, where's your phone book?
What do you mean you still can't find her?
Lauren, can I have your phone book?
Well, look under the bed or in the basement. She's got to be there somewhere.
Will somebody throw me their phone book?
Vince, it's in the drawer there. Okay, you're really starting to scare me here. Are you sure you've checked absolutely everywhere?
Unidentified is available on DVD for a donation of $12 to VCY America. Additional copies to the same address are available for a donation of just $8 more. Call 1-800-729-9829.
Well, friends, our lines are filled up here at Crosstalk, but as soon as you hear somebody disconnect from us, that's your opportunity to get in and call. Write down the number 800-733-9829. Robert Knight is our guest. And, folks, yeah, he writes columns that, he says what other people will not say. He writes what people are thinking, and why doesn't somebody say it? Bob is out there saying it. And if you'd like to receive his columns, send him an email at Robert Knight. Knight, again, is spelled with a K. Robert Knight, and then the number 4. RobertKnight4 at gmail.com. RobertKnight4 at gmail.com. And folks, he's written some tremendous books, and we've interviewed those books on him, like such as The Coming Communist Wave, What Happens If the Left Captures All Three Branches of Government, or Liberty on the Brink, How the Left Plans to Steal Your Vote. He was talking about these long before the 2020 election, for many, many years, and you'll find these books and other information on his website, which is roberthknight.com. roberthknight.com. And again, Knight is spelled with a K, so check it out. Lines are packed here today. Let's begin in Superior, Wisconsin. David, you're on the air.
Good morning. Thank you guys for the broadcast. And Mr. Knight, God bless you and yours, you too, Jim. It's very important that we speak up and speak out. And you're really, to be truthful does not require bravery. So we can actually say Joe Biden is not a legitimate president. He's not. And I believe that the more people we tell, the more that we write it down, the prophetic word that's been coming through my wife, myself, and other people who are getting Rhema words are speaking to this. This election was hijacked, and if H.R. 1 goes through, Mr. Knight, you're absolutely right. We're going to have a really hard time keeping our nation free.
Thank you, David.
So, thank you.
Appreciate the call. And that as H.R. 1, everything that we saw happen in this election as far as the tabulation and the results and the breaking of the rules, breaking of the laws by county clerks and others, that'll become standard fare, Bob.
Well, it will. It's the 2020 election on steroids. Everything you hated about that election and suspected would be set in stone in the law. And this is, and wrapped up in all of this is the attack on the filibuster, because the Senate can stop this bill, but they need to use the filibuster to do it, which is why Democrats are talking about another nuclear attack, this time on the filibuster.
Yes.
For legislation. They did it on judicial nominees and appointees, and it turned around and bit them when President Trump was able to appoint lots of conservatives.
Right.
But they hadn't done it on legislation. It's a long-standing idea that the Senate is there to at least put a brake on something extreme. They'd remove that brake. So if people out there want to let their elected officials know, I'm afraid the Senate is 50-50.
The House has already passed it.
Yeah. The House has passed H.R. 1. They've also passed the Equality Act.
Right.
They're going to update it, I think. But anyway, the Senate is where they can be stopped. The Republicans, if they hold firm, they still need a Democratic vote or two, because Vice President Kamala Harris is the tie-breaking vote in a 50-50 Senate. So people like Joe Manchin of West Virginia need to be need to be told, look, if you want to stay in office, you better not vote for this thing.
By the way, folks, the number does...
in Arizona, John Tester in Montana. There are a few so-called moderate Democrats that need to do the right thing and preserve the filibuster.
That Senate switchboard number is 202-224-3121. Barry is calling from Knoxville, Tennessee. You're on the air.
Thank you. What I would like to say is that, I'm a Republican. I'm a Christian. I didn't vote for Donald Trump specifically because of where we're at today. The reason that we've got this issue going on, and what everybody I listen to on shows like yours talks about, and what they fail to see, is because of his attitude and what he did in Georgia, and then just the whole thing about fraud. He didn't win the popular vote in 16, but he won the presidency. He lost both the popular vote and the Electoral College in 20. There was no big lie. He got beat specifically because of his actions and his attitudes. Now, I don't want a single person to vote that doesn't have the right to vote. I believe in having, as most all my friends and everybody I know, to have ID.
Yeah.
There should be early voting, of course. But this myth that came about people getting multiple ballots.
It's not a myth, Barry. It's not a myth. It is well documented. Barry, it's well documented.
Go to the Heritage Foundation website on vote fraud. They've got over 1,300 cases, and these are just convictions. There's vote fraud all over the country, especially in urban areas where people aren't looking too closely, and Democrats are in power there. Do you recall when Barack Obama in 2012 won something like 60 precincts in the city of Philadelphia? It was 100% of the vote, not a single Republican vote. That just doesn't happen, even by accident.
Right.
Also, there are just so many ways you can commit vote fraud when you have mass mailings, which is why the Democrats want more mass mailings. There's ample evidence. I used to work for the American Civil Rights Union, and we did a study of Philadelphia's voter rolls and found that there were hundreds of people, actually thousands, who didn't qualify. They were either illegal immigrants, some of them were 150 years old, a lot of them had moved out of state, but they don't clean up the voter rolls, and yet they send ballots out willy-nilly to everybody. It's
we
out
also
of control.
We also saw here just recently.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we also just saw recently, and he mentions what President Trump did to Georgia. Well, what happened is now the media has retracted what they said, statements that President Trump they said had made. They retracted them, saying no, he really didn't say that. As it relates to pressuring the Secretary of State to reverse things and find fraud, etc. Certainly the media was in bed with what's taken place here. But just this week, an Assembly committee in the state of Wisconsin has authorized now an audit and a full review of this 2020 election. We understand similar things are going on in Arizona right now. Barry, this stuff is not made up here, and you need to become awakened to those very aspects. Pam is next.
Yeah, also, I would ask Barry, he said, I didn't vote for Trump. Then I'd hope, if you had the ability to vote for Trump and deny Joe Biden and Kamala Harris access to the White House, I have to say you're responsible. All the people who were put off by Trump's crude tweets and so forth, get over it. What would you rather have, a country that's moving quickly into Marxism, or a president you don't particularly like because of his style? I mean, I find it amazing that people were so put off by President Trump, no matter what he did in terms of policy, that they'd sit back and feel real good about not voting for him. And now we see an open border. We see outright socialism being shoved down our throats. I think people ought to apologize if they weren't part of the solution to keep the Biden-Harris people from getting into office.
Look at the sanction on baby killing and monies for Planned Parenthood. Pam in Surprise, Arizona, you're on the air.
Thank you very much for taking my call. This is regarding a statement that the president made this morning in his so-called news conference, he was asked the question, on the statement that he had made that he was going to consider running for office again, and the questioner had asked him about, was he going to run against President Trump? Did he think he'd run against President Trump? And it chilled me to the bone when he made the statement that he didn't know who he was going to run against. There probably wouldn't even be a Republican Party. And that should scare everybody to death.
Yeah, he asked that question, is there even going to be a Republican Party?
He said there may not even be a Republican Party.
Well, that's the plan.
Yeah.
One-party government, socialist, top-down, strangling, dissent. Really, if you look at all the forces at work right now, it should chill you to the bone, from the Equality Act to the For the People Act.
Yeah, and
misnamed.
H.R. 1 will enshrine that.
Yeah, it will. But they're doing so many other things, too. And it isn't just the government. You have to understand, we've got a cultural problem because social media has been censoring conservatives and Christians outright. They do it through shadow banning by suppressing the clicks you can get. They demonetize by not allowing some companies to profit with advertising from the sites. And then they outright block people they disagree with, like President Trump. He's been taken off Twitter permanently. They didn't like his tweets. The man has 80 million Twitter followers, and they just decided, no, we know better, and we're taking him off. To me, this is monopoly-type behavior. And they're all in the tank for the Democrats. Mark Zuckerberg, who founded Facebook, spent $400 million intruding into the election as a private individual, funding drop boxes for ballots in heavily Democratic areas and paying for election personnel. Can you imagine if a big Republican billionaire did that? They'd say, well, he just bought the election. He just stole it with his money.
Pam, thank you for the call here. We're going to move on. Russell in Salina, Kansas. You're on the air with Robert Knight.
Yes, thank you for taking my call, Jim. I had a comment about this feminist movement. It just popped in my head. This might be the ultimate goal of the feminist movement, is to get men to try to turn into women. That's my comment.
Thank you.
Good program today.
Thanks for listening. Bob, they're trying to resurrect the ERA, saying, no, it doesn't have a statute, an end date any longer. We're going to continue to vote for the ERA that was killed under Phyllis Schlafly's time here.
Well, they've shown over and over they don't care about the rule of law.
Right.
All they care about is their agenda. And, the ERA has no business rearing its head again. It is dangerous. It does remove all the protections for women that are built into the law. If you're a feminist out there, you've already got the Civil Rights Act and many other protections. The ERA is just a wrecking ball. And they would have to start from scratch. The legal requirement is clear. So it's probably a good way for the left to raise money, saying that, they need to get the ERA passed. I could see them ginning this up, something fierce to raise money. But beyond that, it doesn't have any merit.
Let's get to Beth in West Dallas, Wisconsin. Beth, you're on the air.
Yes, I just want to make a comment. The phenomenon that I see in the United States with the U.S. citizens is that it's not that they're not informed. I think they're not informed by choice because, let's face it, our country isn't what it is. It's not what it was, actually. It's not the freedom that we had. It's not the expression of our free speech. None of this stuff exists anymore. We're so controlled, and the people are scared, but they look at it as if I don't know it, I don't see it, I don't understand it, it doesn't exist because they're in a state of fear, and that's understandable. But the problem is that the reality is still there, whether they want to admit to it or not.
Right.
And I think that's why people don't do anything for the most part, because they just want to live in this world thinking that, it's going to be over, it'll be okay, it'll get back to right. We had how many years of it being good? This is just a moment, but it's not.
Thank you, Beth.
Our country is gone.
Thank you, Beth. Up against a break. Appreciate your call. This is Crosstalk on VCY.
for the Worldview Report. I'm Brandon House. Our website, worldviewreport.com. Tom Rent is an attorney, and he worked with Frontline Medical Doctors. They have just signed a temporary restraining order in federal court, in fact, in the Northern District of Alabama. What are they seeking to do? To stop the pushing of the COVID vaccine on children 16 years of age and under. The number of doctors testifying in this legal briefing is staggering, including one that was Family Physician of the Year in 2016. He said there are 0 cases of young people 16 and under dying from COVID, and yet we're forcing onto many of them, like 130 institutions, to go to college now, the COVID vaccine that is not, by legal definition, a vaccine. It also has not been tested long-term, nor on pregnant women. It could make children sterile. We don't know what the consequences are to their immune system, and yet we're forcing it on children. I agree with their legal briefing. I'm Brandon House.
The war on normal is our topic today. By the way, if you're in the Twin Cities area, looking forward to being at the Men for Christ conference over the next couple of days. Dalton Windsor will be with you here tomorrow on Crosstalk, and looking forward to having you stop by and say hello, as we'll be having a booth there for VCY America. Let's go right back to the phone lines. Dominique is calling from Aquanago, Wisconsin. You're on the air, Dominique, with Robert Knight.
Hello. Thank you so much for taking the call. I just wanted to say that we're working really hard to try to get election integrity here in Wisconsin, and we did pass that they are to be audited, so that was wonderful. But it isn't just the H.R. 1 on the national level, which is absolutely terrifying, of our voting system that's in peril. It's actually our entire Constitution, because right now there are lobbyists petitioning good people, good conservatives, that they have to put amendments in the Constitution, not the regular way we've done for 230 years, but through a convention of states, which actually opens the whole Constitution. And Congress will be the one to determine the delegates. And Congress is free to appoint themselves as delegates. And it's very, very dangerous. And it's almost like a Nancy Pelosi, we have to pass the bill so we can find out what's in it. Because once they reach the 34-state threshold, then it can be terrifying. They can open the whole Constitution, and they can't change it at that point. And there's globalists have new constitutions already in the works. There's the new States of America that will disarm the whole population. There's the NAU, Canada, United States, and Mexico. This is like a very, very serious problem. And right now, the Assembly and the Senate of Wisconsin are getting really close to voting. Our whole family testified yesterday to the Senate committee on this, and they have not voted yet. And I would just encourage all your listeners to call them and ask them to vote against the Convention of States before it's too late.
Thank you, Dominique, for your call here today. And we've done a full program on that particular issue, but I know that's a major concern as well, and a great divide, even on conservative groups, on that very issue.
Yeah, it is. It is. I was opposed to it, and now I'm taking a new look at it because the government's out of control. There has to be some counterforce. I'm told by supporters of it that no, it would not open the whole Constitution up. You can limit it to one topic, and the people most pushing it want a balanced budget amendment because Congress can't control its own spending. And a balanced budget amendment has to come with a 3/4 threshold in both houses to pass any tax increases. Otherwise, they just raise taxes.
Yeah. And like
anyway,
I said, and I know, and there are others who would say, wait a second, no, and I've looked at the legalities of this and said, no, they can't take more issues. That is another whole program in itself, but the Article 5 or Convention of States does need to be seriously taken a look at here in this regard. Let's go to Fred next in Milwaukee. You're on the air, Fred.
Yes, regarding the war on normal, is it normal to have television commercials for vaccines for the human papilloma virus for children, and when it's only caught from children basically having sex? It makes no sense to have that.
Promiscuity. Thank you, Fred, for that. That's something that deals with. The HPV is to battle promiscuity, Bob.
Yeah, human papillomavirus is out of control. It's the most prominent sexually transmitted disease right now. And they've been pushing this HPV vaccine on everybody because it paves the way for more promiscuity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, they sell it as protecting kids, but you know, in a better world, people would save sex for marriage, and that's how God planned it.
That's what's normal.
That's what works.
Mm-hmm.
That's what works. Nothing less than that works, really.
Yep. Barry in Tennessee, you're on the air.
Yes, it's amazing how many people that call themselves Christians, yet they oppose the biblical values on the political party. They call themselves Christian, but yet they'll vote Democrat. And they say, well, I'm not against abortion. I mean, I'm not for abortion. And goes, I'm against that. But yet, I've told a lot of these people, I said, well, you know, when you pull that lever for the Democrat Party and that party that's anti-God and that party that's pro-abortion, I said, you're complicit to that. You're supporting that, and you're a part of that, and you'll be judged by that and for that. I just wanted to say that these people that say that they're Republicans and oppose what is right, they're actually, what the word says, they're opposing themselves.
Okay, thank you, Barry. And Bob, I saw the story about Democrats for Life who were just dismayed that Joe Biden has been pushing abortion, and it's like surprise, surprise, surprise. I mean, he's doing exactly what he said he would do.
Oh yeah, well, there's an even more weird group, evangelicals. Pro-life evangelicals for Biden.
That was a group.
You know,
yep.
That's an oxymoron.
Yep, that was a group.
I mean, he made it very clear during the election. Totally pro-Planned Parenthood, abortion at any time, you name it. And if they thought he was pro-life, I can't imagine anybody being that deluded. They've got to be very dishonest people or useful idiots at best.
Gail is calling from Watertown, South Dakota. You're on the air.
Yes, Jim, the other day when I heard you on the radio talking about Kristi Noem,
yeah,
I was going to contact her, and then I heard what she said to Tucker Carlson, and I went on a program where she said that she was actually trying to get a coalition together, because what's happening is she'll sign the bill if it's written for the younger kids to up to grade 12. But for the college kids, if she signs the bill right now, the NCAA won't let our state play. So,
and I've seen that. I heard the debate back and forth, Gail, and I've seen a number of pro-family organizations just, calling out Governor Noem on this regard, that indeed she is being bullied by the NCAA here at this point and not standing up to them, and that's been the concern. I wish we had more time, but we're down to 30 seconds. Bob, what would you like to leave with our listeners today on either her call or the topic as a whole here on the War on Normal?
Okay, well, I want to lay the War on Normal at the feet of the media right now, because I've never seen them so irresponsible. They're totally in the tank for a hardcore Marxist worldview. Just look at the coverage of the terrible shooting in Colorado and how they've covered it. You know, do you find the race of the victims anywhere in any coverage? No, you won't. That's because most of them were white, and the shooter was a Muslim, and so therefore it's just a shooting, and it's just a matter of mental illness. But the initial reports, they tried to lay it to white nationalism and part of the white racism in America.
Yeah.
Don't believe that stuff; it's poison.
RobertHKnight.com is a website. RobertHKnight.com. Bob, thanks for being with us.
Always a pleasure, Jim. God bless you for your program and everything you do.
And friends, let us encourage you. Take a stand for the truth.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.